Good evening from the University Community Center at Western University. I'm Kat Tang of the Western Gazette, and welcome to the 2024 USC presidential debate between Adam Ursenbach, Emilie Kalaydjian, and Dorian Jones.
One, I really want to innovate on what this student council is able to achieve. I want to go for big picture items like starting tenants unions, like creating weekly food bundles for students, similar to HelloFresh, so that they can get cheap, easy access to food and help them adjust to adulthood.
This is a campaign that is built off of listening to other people. We want to focus on professional development and ensuring that, after your time here at Western, you feel best prepared. While you're here, it's really integral that you feel safe, you feel supported, you have fun.
My entire candidacy surrounds building a community and eliminating divides that have tainted our campus. We really need to lock down on transparency and make things more accessible. We need mental health resources. I have created a new mental health plan.
Adam, your leadership experience comes from being involved in debate organizations both at Western and nationally, as well as Western's chapter of the Kappa Alpha Society, 3 groups with no ties to the USC. How are you going to lead an organization you've never formally been a part of?
Debate is something that still has a lot of opportunities for management. First of all, I managed QSID, which oversees 20 clubs across Canada. Also in managing the debate club itself, this is a club that has to manage events that bring in 500 people. It's a role that requires a deep amount of ability to make fast and effective decision making. I think it's still widely applicable.
Emilie, in your platform, you focused on a number of issues that involve collaborating with Western to implement more EV chargers on campus and creating more study spaces on campus. These initiatives are under Western's jurisdiction. Why do you think the USC should spend time and resources on this, where there's more red tape, compared to initiatives that directly fall under your purview?
One of the things that I've been really fortunate to do over my last 4 years at the university is work heavily with administration. And I think with the USC in partnership with working with students, a large thing you have to do is also work with admin. We owe it to students to ensure that they have the resources here. Yes, there is red tape, but that is the job with this. You have to do hard things and facilitate things. And I think ultimately through my experience with the Senate and working with administration, these are things that we can advocate for and get done.
Dorian, more than half of your platform points are advocacy-based. Why do you think devoting the majority of your resources to advocacy is the best use of your time as USC president?
As long as people are avoiding advocacy initiatives, there will be no change. It is a process. Advocacy doesn't take place overnight. It is very important that we actually start somewhere, and that starts with me in office if you elect me as USC president.
Emilie, in your platform, you mentioned implementing a system for USC's off-campus housing services called Rate My Landlord, where students can share their experiences with different landlords and buildings. This platform has the potential to receive unjustified bad reviews and could generate libelous or other legal issues. Why do you think this is a good idea for the USC to implement, given the potential problems that it could pose?
With Rate My Landlord, one of the things that we can especially see for international students, you need some context of what bus stops are around. Are your landlords going to, respond very quickly? Is it a safe place? These are things that people want the answers to, but there's not a centralized area or website to look at. It's really vital that this is anonymous for safety issues that this website, like the template that it follows, but also it's going to be filtered.
Dorian, you suggest establishing a centralized form designed as an anti-racism tool for individuals to confidentially report discriminatory incidents. Since Western's Human Rights Office already operates a discrimination and harassment reporting tool with the option of anonymity, why should the USC create and manage your proposed form?
The current reporting tool that the Western administration and the USC uses is for sure outdated. Some of the problems is that people can only submit a specific amount of PDFs into there. They can't list all of the problems that they have. I don't think that anybody has actually heard anything being done with the reporting tool. I don't think that people even know about it in the first place. And these are things that my specific forum will address. We are going to make it very transparent. We are going to make it so that you guys actually know about the reporting tool, and we are going to take specific input from students on how to improve the reporting tool after we've already informed them that it exists.
Adam, in your platform, you suggest subsidizing healthy food on campus, including fruits, vegetables, and probiotic foods sold by Western for a net zero profit margin. What USC service will you reduce funding to for this subsidy, or will students be paying more in ancillary fees?
The grocery store itself is owned by Western, and we can advocate for Western itself to subsidize these foods. The reason that this would be good for Western's administration is that, one, this is still relatively low cost. It shows that Western is dedicated to student mental health. And then if it comes to being able to subsidize these foods, I think a lot of my other initiatives have the ability to bring in money. Opening the theater again. This is an example of a way we could create the money necessary to pay for it.
Dorian, in 2022, soft names were removed in a joint announcement from the USC and Western, following an independent external review that recommended their removal to address sexual and gender-based violence. On your Instagram, you have promised to bring back soft names with the stipulation that the USC will review each individual name and the associated story. Why do you think Western administration will endorse this proposal?
Soft names is a very big Western tradition. I believe that we can bring back soft names in a manner that is respectful, appropriate, and will improve the soft program because people will be more engaged with it. I agree with the previous decision to remove it under the premise that it is not regulated. But with my policy, it will continue to be regulated.
Adam, you say you will create a student-tenant union within the USC to collect detailed reports from students about their housing conditions. Western's community legal services already provide student renters with legal advice, and there may be a legal risk for the USC to advocate against specific landlords. Why do you think the USC should be involved with this initiative?
If we're not willing to take any risk to actually improve students' lives, I think that reflects poorly on the student union. I think we should be willing to do things to help people who have been kicked out of their houses, who have been rent gouged. We can at least increase communication of this legal clinic. Many of these services exist, but because they get advertised during O Week and then you're just kind of expected to know about them generally afterwards, you don't go to them. We should have posters every single bathroom saying, are you having financial problems? Go here. Are you having housing problems? Go here. We can at least make this education accessible, if not systematize it to protect students on a broader basis.
Emilie, you have been on Western Senate for 3 years and now sit as the chair of student senators. Western student senators have already identified 48-hour grace periods, compassionate accommodations, and final grade deadlines as advocacy priorities, but have failed to make a difference in the Senate. Why do you think, as USC president, that your advocacy will more effectively ensure these goals are met?
The only group on campus currently that is working on the replacement for the SRA is something that I've been very privileged and lucky to sit on. So through that, I've been working with deans, provo, and we've been able to draw up new things that we're going to be bringing up at the end of the school year. The same thing applies for the 48-hour accommodation rule. That is not something that has been brought up in my term, and has not been brought up specifically with the WSS. Those are things that are much more committee-based. I do have to make that a slight correction. So with accommodations, it is working. These things are happening, and we need to make sure that we're supporting students in this endeavor.
Adam, in your platform, you suggest reintroducing live-in softs to residents. This year, Western's residences are at a high capacity, with some first-year students living in Bayfield Hall, which used to be dedicated to upper-year students. How do you plan to advocate for this, given the limited space available?
There's already going to be a need to change policy on how many residences exist, how we intake students. And so whether or not we reintroduce softs this year or merely create plans to introduce them in the next couple years, I still think it's going to be possible. I think softs are important because they have a level of responsibility that can help protect against students overdosing, drinking too much. They can protect against gender-based violence. And I think this is a responsibility that is necessary for the university to take on.
Emilie, a few of your platform points, like creating an anonymous SGBV reporting tool, advocating to Western to create a financial literacy course, and implementing a religious discrimination reporting tool, are services that already exist at Western. Given that these services already exist, why did you choose to include these points in your platform?
The anonymous reporting site goes through Western itself, and I'm looking at an external reporting site called Reese, which I think is really, really exceptional. I've had an exceptional time working with them through my past 3 years with One Love. Additionally, when you're talking about the financial literacy course, we're talking about 2277 through Moss, which is a course that I took. Personally, do not think it's very basic level financial literacy. We want to follow a model that McGill is actually using right now, which is free and accessible to all students, not just people who typically go through Moss. With the religious discrimination tool, currently, the reporting form does not have religious discrimination on it. It says racism only, and underneath in brackets, it includes anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, not religious
Thank you,
discrimination.
Emily. Dorian, some of your student experience items can be costly, such as bringing back House Olympics, which awarded a $7,000 cash prize to a group of housemates. What USC service will you reduce funding for these initiatives, or will students be paying more in ancillary fees?
So in terms of bringing back House Olympics, I think that it is actually more beneficial to have it implemented because it is going to increase the student engagement and actually bring more profit to the university.
Pick an item from one of your opponent's platforms that you disagree with and explain why. What would you do differently?
If I was to describe one thing from each candidate, I'm actually going to start with Emilie. And I honestly think one of the things I noticed was the revamping of classrooms to accommodate for dance halls. This, to me, is not really in the purview of the USC president. And in fact, this, to me, is a big ticket spending item. For Adam, I definitely think that it is Adam, I'll have to get back to you.
I think a very obvious point of clash that exists is the Rate My Landlord service versus the tenant union service. Informing and educating students about the things they have to do is one, a way to start documenting abuses by landlords so that if we're going to start making more legal cases, we will be safer in doing it. And two, it allows a much more detailed set of structured approaches than simply rating landlords, which again, you can have biased students. There's a lot of subjectivity that goes into it.
If I could pick something that's a general theme between both Dorian and Adam, it is the lack of points on their platform with accessible education. This is something that I think is very integral. There's thousands of students who are represented under these groups, and it was really integral that that consultation happened for my platform personally. With the dance spaces, one of the things that I personally think is that something has to be done. Because when you're walking down the social science tunnel or when you're walking into alumni and there are many student groups who are there, they do not have the space or the access. Student services has a large budget and they are able to actually provide foldable mirrors to these rooms. Rate My Landlord is a great place to have open discussion, and I think when it's filtered, I think that's really important and necessary to have that open discussion because students don't necessarily have that access, especially first years and international students.
Just rating landlords, I don't think would be sufficient. I think we need a much more systematic approach of actually educating people how to make claims, what your actual rights as a tenant are. So at the very least, when you make reports, it's much more reasonable.
I totally agree that there should be more dance spaces. I still think the infeasibility of it comes from the big ticket spending items and in terms of renovations. But that's not to say I disagree with including more dance spaces on campus. In terms of getting back to Adam, what I actually wanted to say about that was you actually have something about blue phones on campus, which they act as emergency phones, which people can go to. I also wanted to say that this is a big ticket spending item on yours, and that's something that I identified from both candidates. But that's not to say that I don't want to take more proactive measures in terms of making our campus safer.
You have a vulnerable person and you also have a likely offender. When they see the blue phone, it stops people from actually even perpetrating that violence. So what that means is when I'm walking home and it's dark at King's and it's pitch black, I know that there's something ahead of me. But you know who also knows? A likely offender. They're really integral for that reason.
I agree that blue phones on campus stop people from engaging in violence or anything to that effect. But that's not to say that there's other options like cameras, which is for sure a cheaper option.
I think the other thing as well is work with the USC, you can work with the municipal government who also can provide these resources, especially in neighborhoods like Old North that are connected to King's and Western Main Campus.
Western has a reputation for providing a fun and memorable student experience. The USC has a hand in this through concerts, orientation week, beer fest, and other programming. What makes your plan for student events the best compared to the other candidates?
A lot of my focus comes down to working on the smaller things. we already have really good big events. We already have Purple Fest, and that costs us money. Like, it's a big event to be putting on. We don't necessarily need to like have more huge events. I just think things like opening up the movie theater and playing films that people are actually going to appreciate.
One thing that was very, found true in my platform is this contribution to professional development. So you'll see, even in the fun stuff, there are opportunities for students to grow in their career. So you see our collaboration with Forest City Film Festival, also reopening McKellar Theater. It provides entertainment for us, but also people who are interested in films and in the arts. Live performances at the Spoke, lifting up music students and giving them the opportunity to build their music resume. I really also want to elevate Frost Week and giving residence council support on that, but also creating new events like après-ski events on our outdoor fields with heaters.
I already talked earlier about bringing back House Olympics. I honestly think that this was something really, really fun for Western, and I think it's imperative in the current digital era that we live in to be engaging with digital media, and that is exactly what House Olympics seeks to do. In terms of other policies, bringing back dollar beers. I know that was something that existed on campus before, and people love that Western tradition.
For dollar beers, the reason that it was taken away was due to a safety concern that occurred a couple of years back, and just trying to figure out how to include first-year students on campus. I do think it was a safety concern. However, I also do understand the tradition of dollar beers that does exist at Western.
The theater was really, really fun, but the problem with it is that students weren't really engaging with it, and I think that's definitely something important to acknowledge. When something is removed, it means that, you know what, this isn't something that's perfect for our campus. And to say that we're gonna bring it back, there is no promise that students will actually be fully engaged with this theater.
If you look at the films they were playing in these theaters, it would always be like Marvel movies, but 6 weeks late. Like, I think that having a good selection of films would be a lot more efficient. We're gonna have American Psycho. We're gonna have Wolf of Wall Street. We're gonna be bringing in that Ivy movie, or that Ivy money to the rest of the campus. We're gonna pander to whoever is able to give us money, because that's good for the rest of the student body.
If my roommate or my friend was displaying a film at McKellar, you bet I would be there. And I think with this film festival, it would only be for a couple of days, allowing students to come in and showcase their talent and uplift the arts and increase their professional development opportunities on campus.
I would love to gamify university. I think having little things like you get an achievement if you go to Fanshawe Conservation Park, just little fun things to get you to go outside and spend a little more time having fun. Because I noticed that a lot of programming tends to be targeted towards certain audiences, towards very broad mass media audiences. Let's start targeting the people who might be, a little more out there, a little more gamer.
The ongoing conflict in the Middle East have affected many students at Western University. Looking back at the USC's response, where do you think the student government can do better?
My campaign seeks to eliminate divides, and that is exactly what she has just mentioned has created a very big divide. We need to start with one thing, addressing that there are problems on our campus like hate crime. And once that is done, we can look to my platform, which talks about updating an anti-discrimination tool, which will specifically aim to make this campus safer.
In terms of speed of communication, I think this is crucial. It took 8 days to 2 weeks to put out a statement about the conflict, and I think that this is not reasonable, given that the ability to act quickly on something that is important to students is necessary to show that they are cared for. I think when there are cases of assault on campus, this is something that is clearly outside the bounds of what is reasonable and acceptable, and it is something that the USC should and be able to make a statement about quite quickly. I also think, having more effective consultation with student groups, some student groups got passed over in talking about these issues. I think this is also important.
I can't imagine how some people on this campus are feeling right now. I think this is something, the empathy aspect of it, I just want to be a very good listener with this issue. I think when people don't feel like they're heard and they feel more exhausted after a conversation about something that they care about has been done, we're not doing something right as leaders. And one of the things that we've learned through research with the platform is actually the USC charter doesn't recognize racial discrimination formally in the charter. And I personally believe that if the foundation that we are built upon is missing this piece, a very important and relevant thing that is going on this campus, like Dorian mentioned, there are people who are being legitimately hate crimed on this campus. We need to be empathetic to that, but we need to formally address this in the foundation that exists for the USC and talk about this as something that we do not tolerate and bolster support for people who are hurting.
We will now move into the audience question period.
What initiatives do you have currently in your platform to help amplify Indigenous voices, make them feel seen and safe on campus?
A lot of responses to like racism on campus can often be quite reactive. What I want to do is have monthly forums with cultural clubs or any other relevant or representatives where like issues can be brought directly to the USC executive so that rather than waiting for something bad to happen, we can start fixing problems right away.
Although I don't have anything specific about Indigenous relations on my platform, I have done many consultations, especially with all of the VPs, and I concur with them that I will continue to collaborate with the ISA and on their current initiatives.
One of the things I'd like to do is have an Indigenous Relationships Coordinator. Additionally to that, I would like to have a lacrosse game that is led by Indigenous leaders in the area with the varsity lacrosse athletics teams and collaborate with people in the area so that we can do informational and educational events during that game. At the halftime, have an elder come and speak. There can be performances. I think that would be really special to highlight Indigenous culture.
I believe that you would all consider yourselves pretty well involved with student government and or leadership. Of course, this experience shows your qualifications as presidential candidates, but it can also lead to a sense of complacency. If you become president, how will you be prepared to work with anti-establishment counselors to bring about real change and transparency to the USC?
I think for myself, with the Senate, one of the hardest things that you have to do is go against the grain. Having the courage to kind of get up and say, no, this is what we need. It can be hard sometimes, and saying we need change, and finding out how to do that rationally, finding out how to do that in a way that's taken seriously is also very important.
Being proactive and being engaging in prevention. By actively engaging and sending out surveys and actually popping out to different events, different clubs, and actually asking them for their opinion, we can actually avoid things like this. And that's how change can actually be made more efficiently, even though student politics is very advocacy-based.
I would say that I am slightly outside your description. I would not describe myself as a typical USC insider, and I think I already go against the grain somewhat, though I don't think in a way that would be particularly harmful to my ability to interact with people. The kind of thing I'm trying to do is having a willingness to be a bit more different.
We are at the end of the Gazette's 2024 USC presidential candidate debate. Thank you to everyone who attended tonight, and be sure to follow along with our elections coverage at westerngazette.ca.